I didn't realize my life had been stolen at first. Because she didn't take it in one moment. She didn't break in. She didn't fight me for it. She replaced it. Slowly. Carefully. In ways so small. I learned to ignore them. A phrase I used in meetings. A way I structured ideas. A client who suddenly preferred to loop her in. At first, it felt like overlap, then coincidence, then collaboration. Until one day, I looked up and realized people were responding to a version of me. That wasn't me anymore. The first time I saw it clearly. I thought it was a mistake. A glitch. Something that would correct itself if I just refreshed the page. It didn't. Because the name I was looking at was mine. And the woman standing under it was not. She stood in front of a wall of logos. Apple. Flashes going off. People calling her name. My name. And she smiled like it fit her perfectly. Like it had always been hers. Like there had never been a version of it that belonged to me. I should have felt shocked. I didn't. Because something inside me had already been noticing this for years. I just didn't have the language for it yet. Growing up, I thought having a sister meant being seen. I didn't know it could also mean being watched. She used to sit across from me while I practiced presentations. She would nod. Smile. Tell me where to pause. Tell me which lines landed. Tell me how to make it stronger. I thought that was support. I thought that was love. I didn't understand she was memorizing me. Not just my words. My timing. My rhythm. The way I built trust in a room before I made a point. The way I solved problems before people realized they existed. She learned me the way someone studies a language before they move into a country they plan to take. And the worst part? I used to feel grateful when she listened. I used to think, at least someone in this family sees me. I didn't know I was handing her the key to everything I was building. In college, she would help me rehearse. Then somehow, she would present first. Using my structure, my language, my thinking. And people would say, she's brilliant. I remember clapping, smiling, telling myself it didn't matter who presented it. As long as the work was good, that's how it starts. Not with theft, with justification. Because, if you can explain it away, you don't have to face what it really is. The first time it hurt in a way I couldn't ignore was a meeting. A client walked up to me after, shook my hand, thanked me for a presentation I never gave. For a second, I thought I had forgotten something, that I missed an email, that I had somehow been involved without realizing it. Then I saw her, across the room, composed, holding the attention that should have still been on me. And I understood. She had gone in before I arrived. Used my structure, delivered my thinking, built credibility with my voice, and left me standing there to receive gratitude for something I was never allowed to say out loud. I smiled. Because that's what you do when humiliation happens in public and you don't yet know how to name it. You smile. You nod. You act gracious. And then you go home and replay the moment until it turns into something heavier. That night, I stood in my kitchen with my coat still on, asking myself one question over and over. How many times has this already happened? The answer came slowly. And it was worse than I expected. Because it wasn't just moments. It was patterns. People stopped calling me directly. They went through her. Emails got answered before I even saw them. Meetings I was supposed to lead somehow didn't need me anymore. At some point, I stopped being the person in the room and became the person behind it. And then, not even that. That's the part no one talks about. Disappearing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. First, they still know your name. Then they associate it with someone else. Then they stop needing you to be there. And eventually, they don't even notice you're gone. The post wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal. And the worst part? No one questioned it. Not the brands. Not the clients. Not even the people who had worked with me for years. And then, my mother commented, "So proud of you. You've always been the stronger one." I read it once. Then again, then a third time. Because a part of me still wanted to believe I had misunderstood it. I hadn't. That was my mother. Certain. Proud. Looking at my name. And choosing her. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Because strangers can be fooled. Clients can be redirected. Brands can believe whatever story they're given. But your mother is supposed to know the difference between her daughters. She is supposed to know who built something. and who learned how to stand in front of it. In that moment, I understood something I had avoided my entire life. This didn't start with my sister. She didn't create this reality. She grew inside it. She was protected by it, chosen inside it, and I had been trying to earn something that was never going to be given to me in the first place. That was the first time I felt it. Not anger. Not even betrayal. Something colder. Like the ground underneath me had quietly shifted. And I was the last one to notice. That night, she called me. Of course she did. Because people like her don't just take things. They monitor reactions. I answered. Not because I needed answers. Because I needed to hear how she would say it. You saw it, right? She asked. Controlled. I didn't respond. It's not what you think. She continued. It's just positioning. Positioning. Such a clean word. For something that felt like erasure, you've always been better at building things. She said. I just know how to scale them. Scale. Another clean word. For something that had quietly taken everything from me, I made it easier for people to understand your work. She added. Through me. Through me. That was an explanation. That was ownership. And then she said something that changed everything. They trust me more. Not louder. Not smarter. Not more capable. More trusted. And in that moment, I realized what she had actually taken. Not just my name. Not just my work. My credibility. The invisible layer that makes everything you do matter. Because once people trust someone else more than they trust you, you don't just lose opportunities. You lose existence. I should have fought her right there. Exposed everything. Pulled it apart in front of her. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something became very clear. She thought she had taken everything. But she had missed one thing. The part of me she could never see. The part she could never copy. The part that didn't live in presentations. Or language. Or visibility. The system behind me. The one I built quietly. Without attention. Without recognition. The one that tracked everything she had learned to imitate. Not just the work. The authorship. The behavior. The patterns. I opened my laptop. Almost forgotten. But inside it, everything was still alive. Every version. Every decision. Every layer she had never touched. And something else. Something she never even knew existed. A hidden structure. Designed not just to build, but to detect. To recognize when something was being used, without being understood. And for the first time since I saw that post, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I finally understood the truth. She didn't steal my life. She stepped into it. Without realizing. It wasn't something you could just wear. And the more she tried to be me, the more the system would start to reject her. Not loudly. Not immediately. But inevitably. And that's when I stopped feeling like I had lost something. And started realizing she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She didn't call again that night. She didn't need to. Because people like her don't chase control. They assume it. The next morning, I woke up to something I couldn't explain at first. Not a message. Not a notification. A silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong before you even understand why. No emails. No updates. No missed calls. Nothing. I stared at my inbox longer than I should have. Refreshed once. Then again. Then checked the time. Just to make sure I wasn't early. I wasn't. I logged into the first platform. Access denied. The second. Restricted permissions. The third. User not found. User not found. I didn't move. Didn't react. Because those 3 words didn't just mean I couldn't get in. They meant something much worse. The system no longer recognized me. I was still sitting in my own apartment. Still breathing. Still here. But everything I had built was already answering back with the same message. You were never part of this. I leaned back slowly. Let the feeling settle into something solid. Because panic would have been easy. And easy is what she expected. This wasn't emotional. This was surgical. She didn't confront me. She didn't argue. She didn't even try to justify it again. She erased me. Clean. Efficient. Complete. My phone buzzed. A message. From her. I cleaned things up a bit. It'll be easier this way. Easier. Another clean word. For something brutal. You don't need to worry about the back end anymore. She added. I've got it handled. Of course she did. That was always the final step. Take the front. Then take the system. Then remove the source. I typed a response. Stopped. Deleted it. Because the moment I reacted, I would confirm I was still inside her version of control. And I wasn't. Not anymore. I opened my laptop. Not the shared systems. Not the ones she controlled. The other one. The one she didn't know existed. It took a second longer to boot. Slower. Quieter. Almost invisible. But when the screen loaded, everything was still there. Every version. Every layer. Every decision. Untouched. Unmoved. I logged in. The dashboard opened. Minimal. Unpolished. Hidden. Exactly the way I designed it. Not for presentation. For truth. I didn't check my work first. I checked her. And there it was. Her activity. Every access. Every change. Every permission shift she made after removing me. She was moving fast. Too fast. Reassigning ownership. Updating credentials. Rewriting hierarchies. Trying to stabilize something she didn't fully understand. And that's when I saw it. The first fracture. Small. Almost invisible. A dependency calling a version that no longer existed. I leaned forward slightly. Because I knew that part of the system. I built that connection myself. She had overwritten something she thought was surface level. It wasn't. It was structural. I could have fixed it. Right then. One click. Everything would stabilize. She would never know. The system would carry her. Protect her. Like it had always done. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about stopping failure. It was about letting truth move. Slowly. Carefully. I watched the logs instead. Watched her try to correct things in real time. Each adjustment, pulling something else slightly out of place. Not enough to break. Just enough to drift. That afternoon. She went public again. New post. New campaign teaser. Clean visuals. Perfect lighting. Confidence still intact. Caption short. Controlled. Evolution isn't comfortable. It's necessary. I almost laughed. Because she didn't realize. She wasn't evolving anything. She was destabilizing it. The comments came in quickly. Positive. Supportive. Expected. But then, a few different ones. Something feels different. Still good. Just not as sharp. Can't explain it. But something's off. Different. That's how it starts. People don't notice failure first. They feel it. And feeling is dangerous. Because it doesn't need proof. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then another. I answered this time. Hi. I just wanted to check something. A voice said. Careful. Measured. I usually work directly with you. A pause. But I've been redirected. Redirected. Of course. How does it feel so far? I asked. There was a silence on the other end. Not long. But real. It's good. They said. Then quieter. Just different. There it was again. Different. I closed my eyes for a second. Because that word mattered more than any error message. Systems break in numbers. Trust breaks in feeling. I opened them again. Looked at the dashboard. At the slow shift she had started without realizing it. And for the first time, I moved. Not to fix. To guide. One adjustment. Deep in the structure. Invisible. A timing offset. So small it wouldn't trigger any alert. But large enough to compound. Across everything she touched. I hovered over the command for a second. Not hesitating. Confirming. Because once I did this, there was no clean way back for her. Only a slower fall. I clicked and leaned back. Because from this point on, the system wouldn't just feel off. It would start resisting her. Quietly. Consistently. Unavoidably. That night, she called again. This time, no calm. What did you change? She asked. No greeting. No control. Just pressure. I didn't answer immediately. Because that question told me everything. She could feel it now. The shift. The loss of stability. The gap between what she presented and what she actually understood. I thought you had it handled. I said. Silence. Sharp. Then, I do. She replied. Too fast. Too tight. I just need you to check something. Check. Not help. Not admit. still trying to hold the frame, even now. I can't, I said. Another silence. Longer this time. Heavier. You're doing this, she said. Not asking. Knowing. And for the first time, there was something in her voice I had never heard before. Not confidence. Not control. Uncertainty. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. She already understood. You're going to break everything, she said. I thought. You already did. The call ended. I set my phone down. Looked back at the screen. At the system slowly shifting under pressure. Because now, the trap wasn't theoretical anymore. It was active. And the more she tried to control something she didn't build, the more it would push back. Not all at once. Not loudly. But in a way that would be impossible to ignore. And this time, there was no version of me left inside her system to save her from it. This story contains fictionalized elements for entertainment and educational purposes. The first public crack didn't look like failure. That's what made it dangerous. Because at first, everything still worked. Campaigns launched. Posts went live. Engagement stayed high. From the outside, nothing had changed. But underneath, everything was shifting. I saw it before anyone else did. Not in comments. Not in metrics. In timing. Milliseconds at first. Then seconds. Tiny delays between actions. Between systems. Between decisions. The kind of delay no one notices consciously. But everyone feels. That's how trust starts to break. Not loudly. Subtly. Like something slightly out of sync. That afternoon, she had her biggest moment yet. A live presentation. Nike campaign. The one she rebuilt under my name. Executives in the room. Partners watching remotely. Media waiting for clips. This was supposed to lock everything in place. Make her untouchable. I didn't watch it from home. I went back to the same coffee shop. Same table. Same seat. The place where I first realized I had been replaced. Full circle. My phone sat in front of me. Stream open. Muted. Because I didn't need to hear it. I knew exactly what she would say. She walked on stage. Perfect posture. Perfect timing. Perfect smile. The version of me she had practiced for years. The audience leaned in. She started strong. Opening lines clean. Confident. Controlled. People nodded. Of course they did. She wasn't guessing this part. She had memorized it. Slide 1. Slide 2. Slide 3. Everything smooth. Exactly the way I designed it to be. Until slide 12. The pivot. The part that held everything together. The part you can't fake if you don't understand the system behind it. I leaned forward slightly. Because this was the moment. She clicked. The slide appeared. Minimal. Clean. Beautiful. And incomplete. She didn't pause. That was her first mistake. She pushed forward. Talking faster. Filling space. Trying to carry momentum through something that no longer aligned underneath her. But the system behind her didn't move with her. The sequence broke. Not visually, structurally, and once structure breaks, everything after it feels wrong. The audience didn't react immediately. They never do. But a few people shifted in their seats. A few stopped taking notes. A few looked up, not confused, alert. She kept going, adjusted her tone, added more explanation. More words, more confidence. But explanation can't replace logic, and logic was missing. Then came the first interruption. Can you go back to that transition? Polite. Professional. Precisi. The kind of question that doesn't attack, but exposes. She smiled, turned back. Of course. She clicked back. And for a second, just a second, she hesitated. There it was. Small, but real. Because she didn't know what came next. Not truly. She explained it. Smooth enough. Convincing enough. If you didn't build it, but someone in that room did. I saw it in their face. Not disagreement. Recognition. Of something missing. She moved on quickly. Didn't stay there. Didn't let the silence grow. Smart. But not enough. Because once doubt enters a room, it doesn't leave. It spreads. Quietly. Efficiently. Like something designed to. The rest of the presentation held together. Technically. But something had changed. The rhythm. The weight. The invisible confidence that makes people trust what they're hearing. By the end, they applauded. Of course they did. That's what people do. But it wasn't immediate. Not sharp. Not certain. Just slightly delayed. Like everything else. I looked around the coffee shop. No one else was watching. No one else knew what had just happened. And that's what made it powerful. Because the crack wasn't loud, but it was real. And real things don't disappear. That night, the clip went online. Edited. Cleaned. Perfect. But you can't edit feeling. The comments started the way they always do. Brilliant. Next level. So sharp. Then, buried between them, something else. Did anyone else feel like something was off? Still good. Just not as tight as before. Can't explain it. But that middle section felt weird. Weird. Different. The words were getting clearer. Not yet accusations. But not blind praise anymore. I scrolled slowly, watching the pattern form. No one could point to the exact problem. But everyone could feel it. And feeling is enough. My phone buzzed. Her name, calling. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. What did you change? She asked. No control. No softness. Just pressure. I didn't answer immediately. Because now, she was asking the right question. She just didn't understand the answer. I didn't change anything. I said, that's not possible. She snapped. Faster now. Sharper. It was fine before. It wasn't. It just hadn't been tested. Something's wrong. She said. There it was. Not different anymore. Not off. Wrong. I leaned back. Let the silence stretch. Because now, she wasn't controlling the story. She was reacting to it. You built this. She said. I fix it. Fix it. Like I still belonged behind her. Invisible. Useful. Controlled. I thought you understood it. I said. Silence. Heavy. I do. She replied. Too quickly. Then, softer. I just need you to check something. Check. Not admit. Not ask. Still holding on to control. Even now. I can't. I said. Another silence. This one different. Cracking. You're doing this. She said. Not a question. A realization. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. She already felt it. The gap. The drift. The system pulling away from her. You're going to ruin this. She said, her voice lower now. Not controlled. Not confident. Close to something else. I thought. You already did. The call ended. I set my phone down. Looked back at the screen. At the logs. At the pattern forming in real time. Because now, it wasn't subtle anymore. The drift was visible. Not everywhere. But enough. Enough for people to start asking questions. Enough for trust to begin breaking. And once trust breaks, everything else follows. I leaned back, closed my eyes for a second, and imagined what came next. Not the collapse. The moment before it. The moment when everyone in the room realizes something is wrong, but no one can explain why. That's the moment that matters. Because that's when they start looking. And when people start looking, they don't stop. And when they find the truth, there won't be anything left for her to hide behind. The second crack didn't happen online. It happened in a room. Closed doors. No cameras. No edits. No second takes. The kind of room where reputation isn't performed. It's tested. The invitation came quietly. Internal review. Executive level. Required attendance. Her name was on it. Mine wasn't. Of course it wasn't. On paper. I didn't exist anymore. But systems don't follow paper. They follow truth. And truth was already moving. I knew what that meeting was before it even started. Not a celebration. Not a strategy session. A verification. When something feels off at that level, they don't panic. They investigate. Slowly. Precisely. And most importantly, in person. I didn't go. I didn't need to. Because I had something better. Access. Not to the meeting itself, but to everything around it. Calendar shifts. Document pulls. Pre-meeting notes. Silent signals people don't realize they're sending. The room started filling 30 minutes early. That told me everything. People don't arrive early for confidence. They arrive early for uncertainty. She walked in 10 minutes later. On time. Controlled. Perfect. exactly the way she always did. But timing doesn't create authority, it only maintains it. And hers was already slipping. The first 10 minutes were quiet. Too quiet. Polite conversation. Surface level updates. The kind of tone people use when they're deciding how hard to push. Then, someone spoke. Before we move forward. Neutral. Careful. We'd like to revisit yesterday's presentation. There it was. Not confrontation. Alignment. That's how professionals expose something. They don't accuse, they ask you to repeat it. She smiled. Nodded. Of course she did. Because from the outside, she still believed she could carry it. Absolutely, she said. And started again. Same opening. Same structure. Same rhythm. Perfect. For the first 5 minutes. Then, the same point. The same pivot. The same place where understanding matters more than memorization. This time, no stage. No spotlight. No distance. Just a table. And people watching closely. She slowed slightly. Adjusted. Explained more. Filled in gaps she couldn't feel, but knew were there. And that's when it happened. Not a failure. A question. Can you clarify the dependency between these two layers? Precisi. Direct. Unavoidable. The kind of question you can't answer with confidence. Unless you built it. She paused. Just a fraction longer than before. But in a room like that, fractions matter, she answered. Smooth. Technical. Detailed enough to sound real. But something was missing. Not information. Ownership. The person who asked the question didn't interrupt. Didn't challenge. Just nodded. And wrote something down. That's worse than disagreement. Because disagreement is visible, doubt is silent. And silence spreads faster. The next question came quicker. Who implemented this transition logic? She smiled again. Controlled. I led the integration, she said. Careful wording. Not built. Not designed. A few people exchanged looks. Subtle, but real. Because wording reveals truth faster than content. The room shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. Less leaning forward. More leaning back. Less engagement. More observation. That's how authority disappears. Not taken. Withdrawn. Gradually. Without announcement. She felt it. I knew she did. Because her pacing changed. Faster now. Trying to regain control. Trying to push through the resistance. But resistance doesn't respond to speed. It responds to clarity. And clarity wasn't hers. The final question landed differently. Not technical. Not complex. Simple. Who originally built this system? Silence. Not long. But heavy. Because this wasn't about knowledge anymore. It was about truth. She opened her mouth. Then stopped. And in that moment, everything became visible. Not to everyone. But to the right people. The ones who matter. She answered. Carefully. We built it as a team. The safest answer. The weakest one. Because systems like that don't come from teams. They come from someone. And everyone in that room knew it. No one said anything. They didn't need to. Because the meeting wasn't about catching her. It was about confirming something they already felt. And confirmation is enough. The meeting ended politely. Of course it did. These rooms don't explode. They close. Quietly. Decisions made without words. She walked out the same way she walked in. Straight posture. Calm fascia. Perfect control. But something had changed. Not outside. Inside. Because now, she knew. They knew. The difference between performance and authorship. My phone buzzed. A message. Not from her. From someone else. Short. Direct. Can we talk? I stared at it for a second. Because this was the shift. Not public. Not dramatic. But real. Because once they start reaching out to you directly, the structure has already begun to move. I didn't respond immediately. Because timing matters. Especially now. Across the city, she was probably sitting somewhere quiet. Replaying every question. Every pause. Every look. Trying to understand what went wrong. But the truth was simple. Nothing went wrong. The system was just revealing itself. And for the first time, she wasn't the one controlling what people saw. She was the one being observed. Measured. Compared. And slowly separated from something she thought she owned. I closed my laptop. Didn't need to watch anymore. Because the shift had already happened. Not loud. Not public. But irreversible. And once a room like that starts to turn, it doesn't turn back. It moves forward. Without you. And this time, she felt exactly what I had felt. Not anger. Not fear. Something colder. The moment you realize you're no longer the person they believe you are, and there is nothing you can say to make them see you the same way again. This story contains fictionalized elements for entertainment and educational purposes. The next move didn't come from her. It came from the outside. And that's when everything changed. Because internal doubt can still be controlled, managed, contained. But once it moves outside, into clients, partners, and public perception, there is no version of control left. Only reaction. The first signal came quietly. A request. One of the biggest clients. Short email. Direct. Going forward. We'd prefer to review architecture decisions before implementation. Before, not after. Not approval, verification. That wasn't a workflow change. That was a trust shift. I read it once, then again, because I knew exactly what it meant. They didn't trust her to build without supervision anymore. And when that happens, you're no longer leading. You're being monitored. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Different client. Less careful this time. Can you confirm if you're still involved in the system? Still involved. Not leading. Not responsible. Involved. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because this moment, this exact moment, is where most people make a mistake. They rush back in. They prove themselves. They fix things. They try to reclaim control. I didn't. Because control wasn't something I needed to take back. It was something she was already losing. By herself. That afternoon, she went live again. Another post. More polished. More confident. More aggressive. As we scale, not everyone can keep up. I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. Because now, it wasn't just positioning. It was messaging. Directed. Sharp. Public. She wasn't defending anymore. She was rewriting the story. Making the gap look intentional. Making the instability look like evolution. Smart. If it worked. It didn't. Because underneath that post, the comments had changed. Not all, but enough. Something feels rushed. Why does this feel less grounded? Still good. Just not as consistent. Consistent, that word matters. Because consistency is what builds trust. And inconsistency is what destroys it. She replied to a few comments. Confident. Reframing. Redirecting. Trying to pull perception back into control. But perception doesn't follow replies. It follows patterns. And patterns were already breaking. That's when the call came. Not from her. From the board. Different tone. Different weight. We're doing a full system review. No emotion. No explanation. Just a statement. A decision already made. I'd like you to be present. Present. Not consult. Not advise. Present. That was everything. I leaned back slowly. Because this was the moment the war became real. Not between me and her. Between truth and what she had been pretending to be. Will she be there? I asked. A pause. Yes. Of course. Because this wasn't about choosing sides. It was about exposing one. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning. No live stream. No public access. But it didn't matter. Because what happens in rooms like that always finds its way out. That night, she called again. I didn't answer. Then a message. I know what you're doing. I read it. Didn't respond. Another message. You think you can just sit back and watch this collapse? Pause. Then, you're going down with it. I almost smiled. Because that was the first time she got something wrong. I wasn't inside it anymore. I wasn't going down with anything. She sent one more message. Short. Different. Please. I stared at that word longer than I expected. Because that was new. Not control. Not positioning. Not confidence. Request. But even then, it wasn't for truth. It was for stability. For the system to hold her up again. For me to step back into the place she had erased me from. I didn't reply. Because some lines, once crossed, don't get rewritten. The next morning, I walked into the building I hadn't been in for weeks. Everything looked the same. That's the strange part. Places don't change just because you're no longer recognized inside them. The lobby, the lighting, the quiet. But the way people looked at me, that had changed. Not confusion. Not dismissal. Recognition. Quiet. Measured. Like they weren't sure yet, but they were starting to see it. The room was already half full. She was there. Of course she was. Sitting straight. Controlled. The same version of herself she had been holding on to this entire time. But now, there was something else. Tension. Not visible, but present. She looked at me. Just for a second. And in that second, everything we hadn't said was there. You did this. You let this happen. You're not fixing it. I didn't look away. Because now, we weren't in the same position anymore. She wasn't standing in front of something I built. She was sitting inside something that was about to reveal her. The meeting started. No introductions. No small talk. Just one screen. One system. One question. Walk us through it. They looked at her. Of course they did. Because she had claimed it, owned it, presented it, built her authority on it. This was her moment. Her responsibility. Her exposure. She stood, walked to the screen. And for the first time, her confidence wasn't immediate. It came half a second late. Then she started. Same structure, same rhythm, same voice. But now, every word carried weight. Because, this time, there was no distance. No performance. Only truth. And truth was about to surface. I leaned back. Watched. Waited. Because this wasn't the moment everything collapsed. This was the moment everything became visible. And once something becomes visible, there's no version of reality where it can go back to being hidden. She started strong. Of course she did. Because performance was never the problem. It was what came after. The system loaded on screen. Clean. Minimal. Deceptively simple. The way I designed it, she walked them through the first layer. Confident. Controlled. Explaining structure. Explaining flow. Explaining logic she had learned to repeat. Heads nodded. Notes taken. Everything still holding. Then, they went deeper. Can you open the dependency map? The question landed quietly. But it changed everything. Because surface can be rehearsed. Depth cannot. She hesitated. Just long enough, then clicked. The map expanded. Layers. Connections. Hidden logic that doesn't show in presentations. Only in reality. And that's where it started to break. Not visibly. Not immediately. But enough. Enough for someone in that room to lean forward. Why is this call looping back here? She looked. Paused. Adjusted her posture. It's intentional. She said. It stabilizes the system during scale. Clean answer. Confident. Wrong. I didn't move. Didn't react. Because I knew what came next. Can you demonstrate that? There it was. The line she couldn't cross. Because, explanation, can sound right, but demonstration exposes truth. She clicked, ran the sequence. For a second, everything looked fine. Then, a delay. Small, but undeniable. Then another. Stacking. Compounding. The system wasn't crashing. It was resisting. Exactly the way it was designed to. Silence in the room. Not confusion. Recognition. Someone else spoke. Why wasn't this visible in the original build? Original build. That word hung in the air. She answered quickly. It's part of the new optimization layer. Optimization. Another clean word. For something she didn't understand. The man at the end of the table didn't respond. He just looked at the screen. Then back at her. Then, he asked the question that mattered. Who wrote this logic? Silence. This time longer. Heavier. Because now, there was no safe answer. Not anymore. I led the integration. She said again. Same wording. Same shield. But shields don't work twice. Not in rooms like this. Who wrote it? He repeated. Not louder. Not aggressive. Just precise. The kind of precision that cuts through everything else. She didn't answer immediately. And that was the moment. Not failure. Exposure. Because hesitation is truth. And everyone in that room saw it. I could feel the shift. Not visually, not dramatically, but structurally, authority leaving her. Quietly. Completely. I don't have the exact contributor list in front of me, she said. Careful. Controlled. Trying to move past it. But you don't move past questions like that. Not when they've already found the gap. Then we'll pull it, he said. Simple. Final. And just like that, control left her completely. Because now, the system wasn't hers to explain anymore. It was theirs to investigate. The logs loaded. Unfiltered. Every action. Every change. Every author. Time-stamped. Immutable. I watched her face. Still controlled. Still composed. But something underneath had shifted. Because this wasn't something she could talk her way through. The first entry appeared. Her name? Of course. Recent changes. Surface-level adjustments. Reassignments. Rewrites. Then, they scrolled back. Deeper. Older. The structure layer. The core logic. The foundation everything else sat on. And then, my name. Clear. Undeniable. Repeated. Across everything that mattered. No interpretation needed. No explanation required. Just fact. The room went quiet. Not tense. Not dramatic. Certain. That's the difference. Tension means something might happen. Certainty means it already has. She saw it. Of course she did. But she didn't react. Not outwardly. Because control, even at the end, was the only thing she had left. This doesn't change the current structure, she said. Trying to hold the frame. Trying to keep authority. Trying to stay inside the version of reality she had built. But reality doesn't negotiate. It changes ownership. Someone replied. And just like that, everything shifted. Ownership. Not contribution. Not involvement. Ownership. The thing she had built everything on was no longer hers. The room moved faster now. Questions sharper. Decisions forming. Why were access permissions changed? Why was original authorship removed? Who approved these modifications? Each question, not attacking, confirming, building a structure she couldn't stand inside anymore. She answered, as best she could. But answers don't matter when the system is already speaking for itself. I sat there, quiet, still, because this wasn't revenge. This was alignment. Truth catching up to reality. And reality doesn't rush. It arrives exactly when it needs to. The final question came differently. Not technical. Not procedural. Personal. Why wasn't she present? The room shifted again. Slightly. Because now, they weren't just looking at the system. They were looking at the story. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because there was no version of that answer. That didn't expose everything else. So she stayed silent. And silence, this time, said everything. All eyes moved. Not to her. To me. And for the first time, I wasn't invisible. Not behind the system. Not behind her. Visible. Clear. Undeniable. No introduction needed. No explanation required. Just presence. And in that moment, the entire room understood something simple. She didn't take control. She took credit. And those are not the same thing. The meeting didn't explode. No confrontation. No accusations. That's not how real power moves. It shifts. Quietly. Decisively. Irreversibly. We'll take this forward, someone said. Meeting over. Just like that. People stood, closed laptops, left the room. No one looked at her. Not intentionally. Just naturally. Because she was no longer the center of anything. She was the question that had already been answered. She stayed seated. For a second longer. Then stood. Slowly. Carefully. Like control could still be rebuilt through movement. It couldn't. She looked at me. Not angry. Not defensive. Empty. Because now, there was nothing left to hold on to. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. This was the point right before it. The moment where everything has been exposed. But nothing has fully collapsed. And that's the most dangerous place to be. Because once the truth is visible, what comes next isn't controlled by the person who tried to hide it. It's controlled by everyone else. And they had just seen everything. The fallout didn't happen immediately. That's what made it heavier. Because after a moment like that, you expect impact, noise, reaction, something loud enough to match what just happened. But real collapse doesn't sound like anything. It removes sound. The first thing that disappeared was her visibility. No post that night. No response. No correction. Nothing. The account was still there. The name still hers. But the presence and absence is louder than any explanation. The next morning, emails started moving. Not announcements. Not statements. Adjustments. Subtle. Precise. The kind that don't need to be explained. Because everyone already understands why. Access updated. Ownership reviewed. Approval chains rerouted. And one line, buried inside a document most people would never read. Original system architecture attribution restored. Restored. Not assigned. Not updated. Restored. Like something had been put back where it always belonged. My name. Back in place. Not publicly. Not loudly. But structurally. And is what matters. She tried to hold on. Of course she did. Late that afternoon, a post appeared. Short. Careful. Controlled. Growth requires difficult transitions. No mention of me. No explanation. No acknowledgement. Just distance. Trying to reframe what had already been exposed. But the comments had changed. Completely. Who actually built this? Why are people saying there's another name behind it? This feels different now. Not admiration. Not support. Question. And questions don't stop once they start. She replied to none of them. Because there was no version of response that could close that gap again. That night, she called. I answered. Not because I needed to. Because she did. There was no greeting. No positioning. Just breath. Then, I didn't think it would go like this. Her voice was quieter now. Not controlled. Not calculated. Just real. I didn't respond. Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a realization. They didn't even ask me to explain. She continued. They already decided. That's how it works. Decisions aren't made in the room. They're revealed in it. I can fix it, she said. Too quickly. Too late. I just need time. The last thing people ask for. When control is already gone. I looked out the window. City lights. Moving. Unchanged. Because none of this mattered to anything outside our world. And somehow, that made it clearer. This isn't something you fix. I said. Silence. Heavy. Then, I didn't take it from you, she said, the first lie she still believed. I just stepped in where you weren't visible. Stepped in like it was temporary, like it was neutral, like it didn't cost anything. You removed me, I said, not loud, not emotional, just true. Another silence. Then, I made it bigger, she whispered. There it was. The justification. The one she had been holding on to this entire time. That what she did wasn't theft. It was improvement. I closed my eyes for a second. Because that's the part that hurts the most. Not what they take, what they believe about taking it. It was already working. I said, quiet, final. She didn't respond. Because now, there was nothing left to reshape. No version of this where she was still right. I don't know what to do, she said. And for the first time, she wasn't asking for control. She was asking for direction. I didn't give her one. Because this wasn't my system anymore. Not the external one. Not the one she stepped into. This was hers now. The consequences. The silence. The absence. You'll figure it out, I said. And I meant it. Not as comfort. As truth. Because people always do. Just not in the way they expect. She didn't say anything else. The call ended. No goodbye. No resolution. Just silence. The next few days. Everything settled. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Quietly. Clients shifted. Meetings adjusted. Names corrected. And her. She became something else. Not removed. Not erased. Repositioned. Away from the center. Away from ownership. Still present. But no longer leading anything that mattered. That's the part no one prepares for. Not losing everything. Losing the position you built your identity on, and having to exist without it. A week later, I saw her again. Same building, different room. Smaller, quieter. She was sitting at a table, laptop open, working, not presenting, not leading, just there. She looked up when I walked in. And for a second, everything we had been was still visible. Then it was gone, replaced by something else. Understanding, not full, not complete, but enough. We didn't speak, didn't need to, because this wasn't about winning, or losing, or proving anything. This was about something much simpler: truth, returning to where it belonged, and silence, holding it there, because in the end, there was no public exposure, no dramatic reveal, no moment where everything exploded, just a quiet shift, so complete that nothing needed to be said anymore. And somehow, that was the most powerful part of all. There was no announcement, no post, no moment where everything was finally explained, because by the time truth settles, it doesn't need a voice anymore. It just exists. Weeks passed, and the world adjusted, quietly, naturally, like it always does. The system stabilized. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but correctly. The delays disappeared. The inconsistencies faded. The structure realigned. And with it, so did everything else. Clients stopped asking questions because they already had answers. Meetings felt different. Not lighter. Not easier. Clearer. Because now, the person in the room was the person who built it, not someone standing in front of it. I didn't take her place. That's the part most people misunderstand. This was never about switching positions. It was about restoring them. She still worked there, just not at the center, not in the role she had built her identity around. She became quieter, not because anyone told her to be, because there was nothing left to project, no version of control she could recreate, no structure she could stand on without it being questioned. And over time, people stopped looking at her for answers, not intentionally, just naturally, because trust had already moved. And once trust moves, it doesn't return to where it broke. We crossed paths less. Different rooms, different conversations, different gravity, but sometimes, in the same building, we would still see each other. And every time, there was that same moment. Not tension, not anger, recognition of what had happened, of what had changed, of what could never go back to the way it was. One afternoon, I found myself back in the same coffee shop, same table, same seat, the place where I first realized I had disappeared. I opened my laptop. Not the hidden one. The real one. The one that no longer needed to be protected. Everything loaded. Clean. Stable. Not because someone gave it back, because it was never truly gone. Across the room, someone was watching a clip. Muted. But I recognized it instantly. Her presentation, the one that started everything. Still polished. Still clean. Still impressive. But now, different. Not because the content changed. Because the context did. And context is what defines everything. A few seconds later, another clip started. Short. Simple. No music. No edits. Just a system walkthrough. Clear. Precise. Unnecessary to explain. Because it explained itself. My work. Presented the way it was meant to be seen. Not performed. Understood. No dramatic reactions. No applause. Just quiet attention. The kind that matters. I closed the laptop slowly, looked out the window, and for the first time, there was nothing left to fix. Nothing left to prove. Nothing left to reclaim, because everything that mattered had already returned. Not to me, to where it belonged. My phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. I opened it. Short. Simple. I didn't understand it before. No name. No explanation. But I knew who it was. I stared at the message for a second, then locked the screen. Didn't reply. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. Understanding isn't something you respond to. It's something that arrives. When everything else is gone, I stood up, left the coffee shop, walked back into the city that had never noticed any of this happening. Because most of the time, the biggest shifts don't happen in public. They happen underneath, in systems, in rooms, in silence. And by the time anyone sees the result, the story is already over. People think revenge is loud, explosive, obvious. It isn't. Real revenge doesn't destroy someone. It removes what they were standing on and lets reality do the rest. She didn't lose everything. That's the truth. She lost something more specific, something more permanent, the ability to stand in something that wasn't hers, without it being seen. And once that's gone, it never comes back. I didn't take my life back. I didn't need to. Because it was never something she could actually keep. She only borrowed the surface. And surfaces don't last. What lasts is structure, truth, and the part of you that no one else can replicate. I kept my name, not the version people saw, the one underneath it, the one that built everything in the first place. And now, when people say it, they don't look at anyone else. Not because I claimed it, because there's no confusion left. That's how you know it's over. Not when someone loses. When there's nothing left to argue about. Just silence. And the truth, exactly where it was always meant to be.
This content is entirely fictional. Any similarity to real persons or events is coincidental. This video is not news, not a documentary. It is presented for creative storytelling purpose only. AI assisted production.